The restlessness of mind is so exposed when you just sit down to just be. So much comes up, so much arises. It's taking you in this direction, in this direction, in that direction. And all of this seems like an obstacle to awareness. We often feel like, oh, there's an obstacle to this. I keep falling for this, or I can't make this happen, or I can't do this. We feel like there's an obstacle to it, to being aware. But see that all obstacles are perceived. All obstacles, anything that we can claim to be an obstacle, there's an awareness of, to which nothing is sticking, to which there's no obstacle. We become blinded by like fall into this appearance of being blinded. That we take ourselves to be an object in the awareness, having an obstacle. But like this itself, there's a pristine, clear awareness of, to which nothing is sticking, to which there's no obstacle. So the general worldview is, right, like I am this body moving through this changeful world. When we continue to return to just the fact of being, the very self-evident being aware, not associating it with anything, not thinking about it, not questioning it, but just returning to the very fact of being, acknowledging I am aware. This is the whole paradigm which begins to shift. Rather than being a body who has an awareness of the world. Now the body, the world, and everything in between and beyond, there's an awareness of, to which nothing is sticking, in which everything is just coming, going, appearing, disappearing. So there's like no solidity at the core of it. Even the most seemingly solid objects, including the body, are now being seen as changeful appearances. So we usually say that, yeah, but I sort of can't practice this when I'm working, or I'm very busy, or I'm caught up in some conversation. Well, it's not necessarily like a matter of practice. It's just returning to the acknowledgement again and again that whatever we feel like is the perceived obstacle, wherever we feel like we lose this, is itself something there's a pristine, clear awareness of. Always. Even the trying to get somewhere or realize this is like a mental notion or a bodily endeavor, which there's an awareness of. So the mind is trying to take us on a journey, but the pointer, the teaching, is bringing us back to the fact which is ever present of being, of knowing. We can suffer our life. We can even deeply suffer the actual practice, these conversations, getting it or not getting it. All of that is like a movie which there's an awareness of. You know, that fact is to be returned to. That acknowledgement dissolves the confusion more and more. That acknowledgement dissolves the identification with the body. It dissolves the seeming solid point within space, within time, from which it seems like I'm perceiving. Again, like we spoke of on the last call, the seeming solidity of the body, the awareness of it is not so solid. The seeming rigidness and the reality of the world, the awareness of it is not so physical, is not so solid. Physicality is an appearance, is a perception. Being located here as opposed to there is a perception that there's an awareness of. To see that, like, anything that we can say is an obstacle, there's an awareness of. It might seem too simplistic to say this, but uh, try to see what that's pointing to. Try to see how it dissolves the perceived obstacle. The obstacle itself is an appearance. How can it be an obstacle? How can there be obstacle to being aware? It's not something to be worked for. The feeling of like getting somewhere or journeying or practicing is fine, but there's always already an awareness of it. I guess so the journeying is just about like unraveling the momentum of the previous paradigm, of the conditioning, you know, of the mental impressions. So when we talk about silence, silence is nothing other than returning to the fact of being aware, the acknowledgement of being. So if we're to do a little bit of an interpretation of the pointer we were discussing, right, carry on your work in the world, but your work can only take place if you are there. The sense of being must be there. So, you may say, oh, but right now I take myself to be the body. I don't get that yet. Don't even think about that. Like, don't even think about, oh, right now, because this is where I am in my spiritual journey, I take myself to be the body. Later, I might get this, but right now, I'm doing this as a body. Like, this is already an assumption. This is already like, we're now just sort of protecting a belief that we feel like we're going to try to dissolve through some practice. Like, don't even step into that. Just acknowledge the sense of being is here. Forget if it's coming from the body. Forget if it's non-physical. Forget if it's awareness or whatever. Just prior to all of these words is just the sense of being, which is there with or without practicing or whatever. It's there if you're miserable or happy. It's there if you're suffering or not. See that because of which you're able to suffer, with because of which we're able to work. So the pointer that was being given to this person is that do nothing else except this. Do not identify the consciousness, the sense of being aware, with anything. In this case, the body. Who can be conscious of consciousness other than consciousness itself? Is there any other entity? It is there. Consciousness is always aware of itself. The trouble is that consciousness has identified with the body. Do nothing else except this. Do not identify the consciousness with the body. And all that means is just returning again and again. So it's not like, oh, but I do that. But right now it is identified with the body. Don't just we shouldn't just take this for granted We shouldn't just say this and then continue on with the whatever we're doing. But instead, all this means to not identify the awareness with the objects, with the body, with the world, is just to return to the acknowledgement of being aware, which we always, right, we describe it as silent, wordless, a silent, wordless acknowledgement of being knowingly. In that moment, it is not identified with anything. So there's no need for any sadhana except being aware of the fact that it is only in this consciousness that everything takes place. Again, sometimes the mind is like, how do I acknowledge this, or how do I do this? It's just a simple returning to being aware knowingly. Because in that, all momentum of the previous paradigm is stalled. It's like settled, like the dust is settled. What's it's just here-ness, aliveness, beingness. And see that like the clouds are already scattering. You don't have to do anything about it. So you only sense consciousness, you cannot see it. You know it. You know that you are. That is the fact to be returned to. The fact that is that's always present yet not acknowledged. So here there's no question of faith. Just be yourself. You know? So that's a very direct pointing. Just be yourself, be as you are. Any obstacle to this, see clearly that like only because you are this obstacle may appear to be. In beingness, it's seen. So care not for the perceived obstacle, just return to the fact of being aware. That is silence itself. Even the distractedness in meditation, there's an awareness of, to which the distractedness is not sticking. Even the sleepiness in meditation is there's a pristine awareness of that state. The state comes and goes. Even the lack of control of attention, there's a seeing of, to which nothing is sticking. So do you see like the trend here? What's going on is that we're just so fixated in, and this itself is miraculous, the fact that there's this capacity to be fixated in the object perceived, where we feel the reality of that, where we bring that to life. That's beautiful. That's a very, very, it's miraculous. So what's being done now is just rather than being fixated in these little points of views, we're actually totally expanding rather than being in that contracted appearance, just expanding and and being that in which these points of views arise and subside, which in which these mental states are appearing and disappearing, coming and going. And so see how subtle that is, because like, right, we often speak of it this way. The physicality of the world, there's an awareness of. Of the body, there's an awareness of. Of even the mind, which is invisible, right? It's not physical. Yet, we know it. There's an awareness of. even that which we consider invisible. That I, right? Or and like EYE, I, that sees. It is me that sees. So that one is not separate from what I am. To that one, nothing sticks. To that one, there's no obstacle because any obstacle is being seen by that I, EYE, and I. So the EYE, I, and I are the same. So, right, so where is the question of faith in that? I'm returning to just being me, my basic function to know, not adding anything on, not creating anything on top of that. So, so you see, like, just so where's the question of faith? Just be yourself, be the I or EYE, I that knows the world, the body, but also the invisible thoughts and emotions. It's all being seen by one eye, right? In your experience, it's not like there's multiple selves knowing other things. There's a higher self and a lower self. There's this and that. No. In our direct experience, there's only self, me. And the only function of the self is witnessing, knowing, being. How can there be an obstacle to the witnessing if the obstacle itself is witnessed? By who? Not something else. The only self in my experience. So you are yourself. Be yourself. And this tendency to become so fixated in these perceptions, this starts to loosen up. Then we start to see that yes, I am fixated in a perception rather than that seeming to be the reality. The example that we always cover is like the wearing the goggles, like wearing red goggles, and you're seeing a red world, and you don't know that the world's not red. You think the world is red, and someone tells you the world is not red, and you're like, what is red? Because you don't even may not even know that the word red, because you don't even know what to oppose it with, because that's just what you've seen always. That is the way this is. This is the subtlety of this whole thing. So we don't know we're wearing goggles. We don't know that this is a perception through which I've seen all my life. But so meditation, so silence is that with which we are able to, with which automatically these goggles are set aside. And then we become aware that, oh, these were perceptions rather than the truth. And then we become aware that, oh, this was literally the perception through which I was seeing, being unaware that it was a perception. Because if I was aware if it was that it was a perception, then I would not be stuck inside of it. To be stuck in the to be stuck in the illusion is to not know we are an illusion. So silence, so returning to the bare minimum, the essential beingness, knowingness, undoes the confusion, the delusion, the and the suffering that that delusion causes. So it's like two birds, one stone. Because of course we get into this just because we just want to be free of our suffering. We want to be happy. But that also is the same search for self. Even like our material pursuits within the perceivable realm is all a search for the self, a search for lasting happiness, self-knowledge, truth. The spiritual path is just a more direct way of that. But even in the spiritual path, so now we're seeing even the journeying, there's already a pristine awareness of, to which there's no journeying. And any obstacle on the path itself is perceived by the awareness now. In my job, I have to work 8 to 16 hours every day. Very helpful. Yes, see the workings, all the activities of the body in what, right? Like what is in what is being witnessed. There's no obstacle to that witnessing. That fact is to be returned to and acknowledged again and again. So that is what reverses this perception of being a body working inside of a world, being a body, having an awareness of working inside of a world, to so reversing that to the witnessing in which the body, the working, the world are all perceived as changeful appearances. So of course, this is quote unquote harder while working because the momentum is strong. But ultimately, no, it is not harder because there's an awareness of even the perception of harderness. Anything you feel is an obstacle, there's an awareness of. Many of you have expressed that, sometimes when you sit down for meditation, you become too tired or sleepy or whatever. And of course, there are like some practical things that we've spoken to deal with that. But return to this fact, even that even this mental state of sleepiness or big tiredness, fatigue itself is something there's a pristine witnessing of, to which there's no obstacle, to which the sleepiness itself is not an obstacle. So, right, rather than being fixated inside of the perceived obstacle, see the awareness of it and automatically we're free. Notice this. The maybe the sense of light-heartedness and the clarity you feel when you wake up in the morning versus like that changes into a sleepiness during the day, and then once again maybe feeling refreshed, or like you had such a long day with your kids, or you're out and about doing something and then you're very tired. There's a pristine awareness of all of this, which we are not maintaining, which we are not making happen, which we are not doing anything to create or get to. All that we feel like we're doing or creating or maintaining, there's a pristine witnessing of. It begins with the witnessing. Without the witnessing, it is not. So the obstacle to feel to acknowledging this is itself something that's witnessed. Doris said very clear. While I was doing silence in the beginning, I noticed my mind going all over the place, and then I laughed. Then I was like, who's laughing? Is that still the mind? That's not the question to ask. Is this the mind, or what is this or this particular? Because you're just gonna go naming, like, even this naming and wondering and dissecting and projecting. There's a pristine awareness of, to which you're not doing anything to create. All of this itself is being witnessed without you even feeling like you're doing anything. Even feeling like you're doing something is witnessed. Even you trying to figure this out and not getting anywhere, or getting it or not getting it, there's a witnessing of. We're chasing things inside of what is being witnessed, overlooking the witnessing of it. That's why this is difficult. Whether you get it or not, acknowledge the witnessing of it. The witnessing of it does not mean, oh, I'm witnessing this. Even these words, even the body saying this, even the mind saying this is witnessed without you doing anything. Witnessing is absolute zero. It's absolute at the essential level, unmoved, unchanged. Nothing sticks to it. So it's easier than easy. It's simpler than simpler. It's before even working towards something.